My sister-in-law forged the will to steal my house. She was sure I'd let it slide, but trust me, she had no idea who she was messing with. The show began. Let me set the scene for you. My name's Emily, I'm 27, and until recently I thought the biggest drama in my life was choosing between oat milk or almond milk for my overpriced lattes. Turns out life had other plans. The main stars of this train wreck: my brother Josh, 32, and his wife Karen. Yes, her name is actually Karen. And yes, she lives up to every stereotype you're imagining right now. It all started right after my dad passed away. Devastating, of course. But let's be real, when someone's gone, that's when the family really shows their true colors. My dad was old school, the kind of guy who believed in earning your keep. I spent the last 5 years taking care of him because, well, Josh and Karen were too busy with their glamorous suburban lives to lend a hand. So, naturally, when Dad's will was read, it stated loud and clear that the house, the one I grew up in, mind you, was left to me. Makes sense, right? I mean, I was the one making soup and dealing with late-night emergencies, while Karen was probably browsing Pinterest for luxury backyard ideas. But then, things got weird, like Twilight Zone weird. One day, out of the blue, Karen starts casually mentioning how she and Josh were thinking about remodeling the kitchen for my house. At first, I thought she was joking, so I laughed it off and said, "Sure, Karen, maybe start with your own kitchen." Spoiler, she wasn't joking. The first red flag should have been her newfound obsession with stopping by unannounced. Karen suddenly acted like she owned the place, commenting on everything from the dated wallpaper to how the lawn desperately needed professional landscaping. Like, excuse me, who even asked? I chalked it up to her usual passive-aggressive nonsense and tried to ignore her, but something didn't sit right. Then came the moment that slapped me in the face. I walked into the kitchen one morning, half asleep, to find Karen sitting at the dining table, sipping coffee like she'd been there for hours. "Morning," she chirped, far too cheerful for someone who doesn't even live here. "Josh and I have been talking, and we think it's time this place got a little upgrade." Now, listen, I'm not a violent person, but I swear I felt my hand twitch. "What are you even talking about, Karen?" I asked, keeping my tone as chill as possible. She just smiled that infuriating, condescending smile of hers and said, "Oh, you'll see." Here's the kicker. 2 days later, a shiny new copy of my dad's will magically appeared on the dining table. Only this one looked different. It now claimed that the house was left to Josh and Karen. Must be a mistake, I thought. Yeah, no. This was no mistake. It was fraud, plain and simple. You know that moment in movies when the hero has an epiphany, and the dramatic music swells? That was me, standing there with my morning coffee, staring at this ridiculous piece of paper. Karen's timing couldn't have been better or worse. She walked in right then, practically glowing. "Oh, you found it! Isn't it great? Now we can finally make some changes around here," she said, as if this was just another Tuesday. I couldn't help myself. "Karen, what the heck is this?" I asked, waving the paper in her face. She didn't even blink. "Oh, the new will. Josh and I found it while cleaning out some old files. Funny, right? Guess your dad must have had a change of heart." Let me tell you, the audacity was so thick, you could have cut it with a butter knife. At that point, I knew 2 things for certain. 1, Karen had crossed the line, and 2, I wasn't about to let her get away with it. The game was on all right, comma. So there I was, holding what Karen called the new will, trying to process the level of absurdity unfolding in front of me. Let me tell you, this wasn't just a red flag. This was a whole parade of crimson banners accompanied by a marching band playing the Karen national anthem. I mean, who just finds a new will conveniently handing them a house? But, oh no, Karen wasn't even sweating. She actually looked proud of herself. "You're joking, right?" I said, giving her one last chance to act like a decent human being. Spoiler alert, she didn't take it. Instead, she just laughed, like this whole situation was one big joke. "Why would I joke about this, Emily? Josh and I are just trying to do what's best for the family." Oh, best for the family? Girl, please. I've heard better excuses from people trying to cut in line at Starbucks. I knew I had to play it cool, though. Karen thrives on drama. And the last thing I wanted was to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose my mind. So I just smiled, probably looked more like a grimace, and said, "All right, Karen, if you're so sure this is legit, I'll have it checked out. You don't mind, do you?" Her face didn't even twitch. "Of course not," she said sweetly, but I could see it in her eyes. She was calculating something. Karen wasn't dumb, and that's what made her dangerous. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she thought she'd already won. Now, let me paint you a picture of my next move. Picture me sitting in my car outside my dad's attorney's office, clutching that fake will like it was a piece of radioactive evidence. The whole drive over, I kept replaying Karen's smug little grin in my head, and honestly, it was fueling me like a triple shot espresso. I didn't care what it took. I was going to prove this was a scam. The attorney, Mr. Harris, was this no-nonsense guy who'd been handling my dad's affairs for years. When I handed him the will, his reaction was immediate. His eyebrows shot up like he'd just seen a ghost. "Emily, where did you get this?" he asked, his tone shifting from professional to borderline concerned. "Karen gave it to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She said she and Josh found it in some old files." Mr. Harris sighed and adjusted his glasses like he was about to drop some serious truth bombs. "Emily, this is not your father's will. It's a forgery, and not even a good one." So you bet I was ready for this answer, but hearing it out loud still hit differently. "What do you mean, not a good one?" I asked, because if Karen was going to mess with my life, the least she could have done was hire someone competent. "For starters, your father's signature is completely off. I've seen his handwriting for years. This isn't even close. And the formatting? Whoever did this didn't even bother matching the original template." Wow, Karen was out here playing Monopoly, thinking she was a real estate tycoon, and she couldn't even fake it properly. It would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. I left the office with a stack of evidence and a growing sense of detention. Karen might have thought she was slick, but she underestimated one crucial detail. I wasn't about to let her take what was mine without a fight. As I drove back home, I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous this whole situation was. I mean, who forges a will and leaves it lying around like a free sample at the grocery store? By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had a plan brewing. Karen thought she was playing chess, but honey, I was about to flip the entire board. All right, so here's the deal. By the time I got home, I wasn't just mad, I was ready. You know that feeling when you're so furious you start talking to yourself in the car, like you're preparing for a courtroom drama? Yeah, that was me. Except, in my version, I wasn't just winning. I was absolutely obliterating Karen in front of an imaginary jury. And let me tell you, my closing arguments, chef's kiss. Now, walking into the house, I noticed something odd right away. Karen's car was still in the driveway. What was she even doing here? Plotting her next move, organizing a fake ribbon-cutting ceremony for her new house? I wasn't in the mood for whatever nonsense she was brewing, but I decided to play it cool for now. When I walked in, there she was, lounging on the couch like she'd just conquered the world. "Oh, Emily, you're back," she chirped, acting like we were besties. She even had the audacity to be holding my mug, sipping tea like she wasn't the human embodiment of chaos. "Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we need to talk." Her expression didn't change, still smug, still pretending like she hadn't committed a federal offense. "Of course," she said, setting the mug down. "But can it wait? I was just looking at ideas for the backyard. You know, once Josh and I move in." Excuse me? Backyard ideas? For a house she hadn't even legally stolen yet? The audacity was giving me whiplash. "Karen," I said, forcing a smile so fake it probably hurt my face. "About this whole new will thing, you do realize it's a crime, right? Like, I'm pretty sure Netflix has a whole category dedicated to people who try stunts like this." Her face twitched for a second. Just a flicker of doubt, but she recovered quickly. Emily, I don't know why you're being so dramatic. Your father clearly wanted Josh and me to have the house. We're family, after all. Ah, yes. The classic "we're family" card. Love that for her. Karen, I replied, my tone dripping with sarcasm, if Dad really wanted you to have the house, why didn't he, I don't know, tell anyone? Or maybe write it into the original will instead of relying on your creative interpretation? She didn't respond immediately, which was rare for Karen. Instead, she reached for her phone and started scrolling, probably looking for Pinterest boards labeled "How to Gaslight Your Way to Property Ownership." Now, here's where things get interesting. I decided to dig deeper. While Karen was busy ignoring me, I casually said, "By the way, I stopped by Dad's attorney's office earlier. He had some interesting things to say about the will." Her hand froze mid-scroll. Gotcha. "Oh?" she said, trying to sound casual, but failing miserably. "What did he say?" "Oh, you know, just little things," I replied, leaning against the doorway. "Like how the signature doesn't match, or how the formatting is all wrong. Oh, and my personal favorite, how the new will magically appeared weeks after Dad passed." For a split second, Karen's composure cracked. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. It was like watching a computer try to process too much data at once. "Well," she finally said, "maybe the attorney is mistaken. People make mistakes, Emily." "Mistakes? Girl, please." At this point, I couldn't hold back. "Karen," I said, my voice rising, "you forged a will. That's not a mistake. That's a whole criminal offense. Do you even understand how illegal this is?" Instead of admitting defeat, Karen doubled down. "I did not forge anything," she snapped, her tone suddenly defensive. "I'm just trying to honor what your father wanted." Oh, the nerve of this woman. "Karen," I said, crossing my arms, "if you're so confident, why don't we take this to court? I'm sure a judge would love to hear your side of the story." Her face turned pale, and for the first time she looked genuinely nervous. "There's no need for that," she muttered. "We're family, Emily. Let's not make this messy." Messy? Karen, this was messy. You made it messy the second you decided to play DIY lawyer. By the end of our talk, it was clear Karen was shaken, but she wasn't backing down just yet. That was fine by me. I wasn't done either. She thought she could outsmart me. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't just playing defense anymore. The next round, it was my turn to strike. And trust me, I had plenty of ammo, .so. There I was, standing in the middle of my own living room, watching Karen's smugness fade like cheap eyeliner in the rain. For someone who had the guts to fake a will, she sure didn't know how to handle confrontation. But hey, I wasn't going to complain. Watching her squirm was chef's kiss levels of satisfying. After our little chat, Karen decided to retreat to her safe zone, the kitchen. Why? Probably because she wanted to act like she still owned the place. But I wasn't done. Oh no. I followed her in, leaned against the counter, and said, "So, Karen, what's the next step in your master plan? Moving your furniture in before or after I call the cops?" She froze mid-pour, her tea spilling slightly into the cup. "Emily, you're blowing this way out of proportion," she said, her voice cracking. "Josh and I aren't trying to take anything from you. We're just doing what's fair." Fair? I practically choked on the word. "Karen, you forged a legal document. If fairness was a person, it would have already left the room out of pure embarrassment." She sighed dramatically, like she was the victim in all this. "You're just upset because you don't want to share. You've always been so possessive." "Oh, possessive. Sure, Karen, because wanting to keep the house I legally inherited is such a crime." "Karen," I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm, "you're right. I should have been more generous. Next time I'll just hand you the deed with a bow on top." What made it even funnier was that Karen kept trying to spin this into some kind of family drama soap opera. "Emily, think about Josh. He's your brother. Don't you want him to feel like he has a part of your dad's legacy?" "Karen," I replied, my patience wearing thinner than Karen's excuses, "Josh does have a part of Dad's legacy. It's called memories. What you're after is square footage and a mortgage-free lifestyle." The best part? She still thought she could gaslight me. "Emily," she said, straightening up, like she'd just solved world hunger, I'm sure we can figure this out as a family. There's no need for legal threats or lawyers. I couldn't help but laugh, like actual out-loud laughter. Karen, honey, we left the family stage the second you picked up a pen and decided to play Picasso with my dad's will. Now we're in the legal stage. And trust me, you don't want to see how this one ends. Her face dropped. Finally, a reaction worth savoring. For someone who'd walked in here, acting like she was the queen of the world, she now looked like she'd just been demoted to jester. At this point, I decided to stop wasting breath. Karen wasn't going to admit defeat, and I wasn't going to waste another minute pretending we could talk it out. So I ended the conversation with one last zinger. Karen, pack your bags. This little real estate fantasy of yours, it's over. She didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her phone and stomped out of the kitchen, probably texting Josh about how unreasonable I was being. But I wasn't worried. Karen might have thought she was clever, but she was about to learn a valuable lesson. Don't mess with someone who has both the law and a personal vendetta on their side. The next morning, I decided it was time to shut Karen's circus down for good. Step 1, call Josh. He tried his usual neutral act, saying, "Can't we all just get along?" I cut him off. "Josh, your wife forged a will. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a felony. Wake up." Step 2, evidence. I called a family meeting and laid out every piece of proof from Dad's attorney. Karen strolled in with fake confidence, but that shattered the moment I dropped the folder on the table. "Care to explain this masterpiece?" I asked, smiling sweetly. Josh flipped through the documents, his face turning pale. "Karen," he asked quietly, "is this real?" She tried to spin it. "Emily's framing me. This isn't what it looks like." But Josh wasn't buying it. "Then why does this signature look nothing like Dad's?" For once, Karen had nothing to say. Just silence. And that was louder than any excuse she could have made. By the end, even Josh had enough. "We need to leave," he said, avoiding my gaze. I couldn't resist one last dig. "Take your time packing, but not too much. I've got movers on standby." And just like that, the show was over. Karen's lies were exposed, and my house, still mine. Karen's departure was a masterpiece of awkwardness. She spent a day slamming drawers and muttering about family betrayal, while Josh just looked like he'd aged 10 years. Once they were out, I changed the locks and toasted to a Karen-free life. The cherry on top? Karen posted a dramatic story online about how I ruined her dreams. The comments, brutal. "Didn't you forge a will?" And "This isn't the flex you think it is," had me laughing for days. The house stayed mine, Karen's drama tanked, and Josh eventually apologized. Lesson learned. Never mess with someone armed with the truth and a sense of humor.